Once again, thank you all for joining. This is Overcoming Bottlenecks in a Small Dev Team and how Lendr developed 5 apps under 20 months, 12 months, also under 20.
Yeah.
Let's see if PowerPoint's going to work for me now. My name is Craig St. Jean. I work with Netlink. We are an OutSystems sales, delivery, and training partner. I am an OutSystems MVP, and I'm the director of the OutSystems Center of Excellence here at Netlink. As I mentioned, I am joining from Northeast Ohio. We've got sun and snow. OutSystems is our partner for this event. Did that skip you, Nick?
I believe I'm after
Okay.
OutSystems.
OutSystems is our partner for this event. If you're not familiar with OutSystems, it is a modern application development platform that enables an organization to quickly tackle any application needs. If you haven't experienced low code, I definitely encourage you to check it out. And joining us today is Nick Mates from Lendr. Nick is the project coordinator and tech lead. Nick?
Yeah, had quite a circuitous path to this $10 title, but I joined Lendr in late 2017 and as part of our underwriting team. And as you'll hear a little bit more, we're a pretty small organization and even smaller development team. So was able to move horizontally over as a business analyst to our C# team. And had the opportunity to be a part of our OutSystems adoption all the way from vendor selection to today. Now going on just about 3 years of using OutSystems in the next month or two. So it's been a great path along low code, and it's been a great opportunity with Lendr.
Thank you, Nick. So this is what we're here to discuss today. Again, focusing on how Lendr overcame the bottlenecks of a small dev team. If there are things that you want to add to the conversation, feel free to do so in chat or unmute. We're gonna kind of go through these topics here, but it can be an open discussion. And then at the end, we will definitely have as open discussion as anyone is willing. So let me just move this out of the way from my notes so I can actually see what I'm supposed to be looking at. All right, so the first topic is how Lendr overcame the bottlenecks of a small dev team. And Nick, I figured we could start by talking about how training started, was kind of the start of your journey with getting into the OutSystems platform and how that helped you guys. Could you tell us a little bit about how you guys trained and how things worked out for you?
Yeah, definitely. So when we started out with OutSystems, they have some great online resources, just free online resources, even better, where you can kind of learn the platform as a whole, learn the basics and fundamentals of what it means to develop in low code, and really establish at least a framework of how you build applications in this kind of novel way. As low code's becoming more prevalent, it's becoming less novel, but there's definitely a steep learning curve there. So we, as a team at Lendr, utilized all of their guided paths, which allow for you to learn the platform through a functional role, whether that be a developer, a QA tester, or a business analyst. And then in addition to that, we actually took the opportunity to go out to a 5-day boot camp out at their Boston locations, where it was 5 days of dedicated learning, just the OutSystems platform, and really diving deep into how do you build an application, not just from a conceptual perspective, but from a functional perspective. And I think those two avenues of learning really helped us establish kind of the groundwork for developing successful applications and OutSystems and providing a way for us to really build out this proof of concept. because, and we'll touch on this in a little bit, but there was some trepidation around the full functionality of what you could do with a low-code solution. So we were really using this first year as a proof of concept. And we wanted to go all in on that proof of concept and really provide all the resources necessary. So myself and one other developer went out to Boston for that boot camp, and it really laid the groundwork for success in that first year.
Yeah, and to add to that, when I was starting my OutSystems journey, I mean, the training that's on the OutSystems website was critical to getting myself and my team up to speed. I worked for a property and casualty insurance company at the time, and with the vast amount of training that's available on OutSystems website, there's video training, there's exercises, there's no cost to it. So really ramping up was made as easy as possible. And then it was great to see that you took it a step further and actually did some classroom training as well.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that can be a bit of a bottleneck really with any size dev team, but I guess specifically in your case, how was culture and collaboration a factor in being successful for you?
Yeah. So being a small team, we've always had our technology team much closer to the business side than you might see at a larger enterprise level organization. So if in these initial evaluation months of development, we really wanted to embrace kind of that faster development, which required us to kind of shift the culture internally about how we interacted with users as the technology team and how they reported to us. So we spent a lot of time actually training end users on how to present problems or opportunities for enhancements to our technology team as essentially first drafts of user stories. And we saw a lot of success with that, where it both expedited the development and discovery components of our backlog, as well as giving some ownership to our end users, where all of a sudden an end user doesn't just say, hey, X, Y, or Z button is broken. We saw a large development, especially from our collections and sales teams, about really owning the opportunity to develop the software in a way that they wanted. Where instead of just saying X, Y, Z button is broken, they could say, we really saw an establishment of those users saying, and this is how we can improve the process moving forward. This is how we can save time. And I think that helped offload a lot of that discovery that is required in traditional agile environments. Because in addition to that, we also kind of shifted the roles within our technology team, where we saw more of a hybrid developer and BA role, where in the same time that we wanted to bring the end users closer to technology, we also wanted technology to be closer to the business side. So it really allowed developers to kind of own the process of working with end users, working with the business side, and developing that interaction within departments, and that synergy, I think, was fundamental in the way that we built out a successful team here.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point too. When I first met you, I believe you were a business analyst and you were the main champion for OutSystems in your company. Can you maybe speak a little bit to how someone with your position was able to really get involved and help drive the technology forward within Lendr?
Yeah, definitely. And so right before we met Craig in the introduction of OutSystems, I was purely business analyst from the C# side. And a little bit of context for everyone on the call is my extent of formal coding education is a Java class in high school. So you could say I'm less than qualified to be writing C# code, where as we had that business analyst role, we really saw that there was an opportunity with low code. And it sounds like marketing mumbo jumbo, but we really saw the opportunity for citizen development to really take hold within our organization, where the requirements to be a solid developer within OutSystems was really just a process and logic-based individual rather than someone who had formal education. Not to belittle the formal education, because it is a super valuable component to have and it provides great context. And I think I would have learned the platform much more quickly if I had that. But I think it allows you to expand the potential personnel offerings for individuals that might want to become developers.
I like that, logic-based individual. It should be a title.
Yeah, logic engineer.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. Now, I'm sure what most people are, really excited about is how Lendr was able to deliver 5 apps in under 12 months, which is pretty crazy when you compare it to how traditional development normally works. So I guess first, maybe can we speak to a little bit about what the scope of these 5 apps were and how they helped Lendr?
Yeah, definitely. So our methodology for at least identifying where we wanted to first implement low code was essentially establishing where did we have a 0 in our technological environment on a scale of 0 to 10, where it was essentially a solution for our end users, whether that be external or internal parties. Where was that technology not even present within our technology stack? And as loath as I am to say it, we just didn't even have a customer portal. Where a little bit of context for Lendr as a whole, we provide commercial financing solutions for small to medium-sized businesses. And we didn't even have a way for a customer to check their current balances in early 2018 without emailing one of our customer support representatives. So establishing a framework for how we identified where we could have the greatest value in the quickest amount of time was extremely valuable, where we had those customer and broker interactions that just were non-existent, where we really wanted to bring them up to an 8 on that scale, where all of a sudden we're industry standard rather quickly, or we wanted it to be rather quickly to meet the value proposition of a low-code solution. The other component of that interaction is finding kind of siloed technologies. And so it's kind of a heady phrase, but essentially where we had various components that were tightly meshed to our existing legacy C# systems, where versus those zeros where we could identify places where we could slot this in without a ton of technical debt or technical overhead in that development. And we ended up with the customer and broker portal, but there were other initiatives like our user management side, where internal user management was something that was tightly coupled to our existing systems. So that was something that we offloaded until later in the development cycle. That allowed us to get those first deliverables out as quickly as possible and really fulfill the value proposition of low code.
Yeah, and I think, I mentioned culture earlier. Culture is such a huge thing as well to really enable us to develop apps quickly that provide value. So can you maybe speak to how the culture within Lendr and the freedom to build where you found value without bureaucracy getting in the way, how that helped you be successful with these 5 apps in under 12 months?
Yeah, definitely. So in the same way that we tried to enable our end users to feel empowered to make their own changes within technology and really own that process, we also needed that executive buy-in from the top down as well. And I think getting executive buy-in and really believing in low code without a tested or without a fully fledged proof of concept yet was integral in our success, because having that executive sponsorship really allowed us the freedom to identify those 5 applications that might be most valuable, where it's an easy sell to our chief revenue officer that we're going to have a customer portal up in 12 months. But all of a sudden, our chief risk officer isn't seeing the same dividends gained in those first 12 months. It was really having that overarching buy-in in a long-term solution really allowed us to do well.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the ability to jump out of your commitments with OutSystems was also a big part of what allowed your executives to give that buy-in. Could you maybe speak a little bit to that side of it?
Oh, definitely. So as part of our vendor selection for low code partners, which we wouldn't be here today if we hadn't chosen OutSystems, but one of the largest components of that was the ability for us to, for lack of a better term, jump ship if necessary. If we didn't see the returns that were expected based on a low code platform, we were easily able to export without systems any of our C#, export into C#, anything that had been developed. And that was extremely important for especially our CEO, where if this proof of concept doesn't work, we didn't lose any of that development time, where then we could go back to a traditional coding platform if we needed to.
Yeah, that was one of the big factors with that property and casualty insurance company that I mentioned earlier as well. A lot of low-code platforms, you get stuck with vendor lock-in, and with OutSystems having an option to basically take your applications and convert them into a C# application, so that way you can just detach from OutSystems should worse come to worse. That was a big factor for us as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then, like you mentioned earlier, then all of those walls of bureaucracy kind of fall apart, and you can really allow for the functional roles, whether that be a collections person, a developer, a BA, really to focus on business value add rather than the politics of is the solution correct for our organization short term.
Yeah. Now, we've heard about the first 12 months. So what about the 12 months prior to today? So, how has Lendr evolved in the past year? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so in the same way that we wanted to take those zeros to eights in that first year, and we were able to do that quite successfully and just streamlining our external interactions, we started to look internally and taking our existing fives up to those eights or nines, where we had the opportunity to essentially build out after this proof of concept and the value proposition was fulfilled. We really wanted to expand our OutSystems practice to many more components of our architecture, where as of today, about 80% of our technological architecture is actually built within OutSystems. And that remaining 20%, I really don't feel is a limitation of the platform, just the value or the opportunity cost of replacing legacy systems that work and are low maintenance. But the most exciting project that we've done recently is in about 45 days with a team of 3 offshore resources, we were able to completely rebuild and revolutionize our CRM and payment processing platform, all within Q4 of 2020. That just allowed us to have a full-fledged intranet for our internal users.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, I know one of the things that was a factor as well is you mentioned having all these legacy systems, and I believe you're able to consolidate that a bit and maybe get some cost reduction as a result. Can you speak to that side?
Yeah, definitely. So as part of that intranet conversion, we were able to take out the 3rd largest line item on our technology budget, where just the upfront vendor costs and consolidation that we were able to do with OutSystems, where previously we had 6 or 7 different integration points across 4 or 5 different languages and platforms, has really been consolidated down to essentially 2 or 3. And for most functional roles within the organization, they really only utilize 1 end user experience at this point. So on top of just those vendor cost reductions, we also were able to recognize just operational improvements for human resources cost, where a prime example of this was our collections team was on a day-to-day basis and on anywhere from 5 to 6 different platforms. where today now 90% of their workload is wholly on that OutSystems intranet, and only about 10% is left on these ancillary platforms. Something that we're hoping to get to 0% in the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I bet that improves your employee morale a bit as well too, with not needing to jump between a bunch of different systems and learn all sorts of different things at once.
Yeah, and tying this back into the smaller development team, at this point, it is myself onshore doing business or project planning, business analysis, and backlog grooming. And then we have 3 offshore developers. So we're still a relatively small team, and we've kind of completely revolutionized both the internal and external experiences for our customers.
Yeah, it's amazing. So speaking of customers, we also, we talked a little bit about customer experience and how this impacted your external customers as well as your internal customers. I know you mentioned going from a 0 to an 8 for external offerings. Is there anything that you wanted to add to how OutSystems has impacted the customer experience both externally and internally?
Yeah, so we essentially had 2 different approaches, whether it was based on an external or an internal end user, where those external end users, where we really wanted to establish a just table stakes functionality within our technology environment. We really wanted to build that customer experience from the top down, where we first built out the user flows and all of the various interactions that a customer may have with us, and then worked down all the way down to our data layers, where that customer-centric focus allowed us to have streamlined and modern UIs that predominantly use the baked-in OutSystems elements. So for a little bit of context, I'm not sure where everyone is along the low-code journey, but there are just various UI components that are already pre-built within the platform. And for about 80 to 90% of our externally facing applications, we're using those built-in components as they are, just to allow a streamlined user interface and seamless customer experience as they go through the platform and live through the life cycle with us.
Yeah, and not only are there all those components, but there's also some 80 to 100 screen templates that OutSystems built after studying industry best practices for, what kind of screen do you want for like an admin dashboard or, a list detail screen or something. Have you found yourself using those, or are you guys building custom screen templates?
Definitely for the admin side. With our user management and our outside agency for our third-party collection agencies, those essentially were built completely via templates. And those kind of turnaround times when you have developers familiar with the platform and you have those UI accelerants, essentially, you can see a application built with a single developer within a couple weeks, where if you want a just MVP product out there to really provide value very quickly, that's great as a utilization there, where if you're looking at more of a functionally specific role, especially specific to your organization, then you have the ability to customize those. And I would say that's where our intranet lies, is where we've been able to build user interfaces that are fully customized to each functional role. So the interactions and user interface that our collections agents have is totally disjoint from our underwriters as far as a process perspective goes, but it's still the same underlying data and workflows that allow for strong maintainability across all of our applications.
Great. Yeah, and previously I understand you guys had all of your customer experience, or at least what was built out for your internal users, was built with custom .NET UIs. So maybe can you talk a little bit about how much of an improvement it was to go from those custom built .NET UIs to the OutSystems UIs, and then also from a time perspective, time to market, how not needing to custom build all of those, how much of an improvement you saw there?
Yeah, definitely. From a human resources cost, we are looking at a shift from around 5 .NET developers down to our 3 offshore resources that we currently utilize. So just having a more consolidated team is always going to help with communication and expedition of development, where actually all of those .NET frameworks UIs will be deprecated by the end of next month, where we've wholly moved over to OutSystems, where it just provides a consolidated experience both for our developers and our end users. And sorry, you'll have to remind me of the second half of that question.
Yeah, no problem. How moving to OutSystems, what kind of an improvement you saw in terms of time to market from custom building all these UIs to moving to OutSystems?
Definitely. I actually have a great example of that from yesterday. I still like to stick my head into the code every once in a while and just do some development for myself. So yesterday we had a individual on our finance team that needed a new report exportable from one of our verticals portfolio management systems. And we were able to get both not only the reporting functionality within the UI, as well as an exportable Excel file for them to do some additional analysis up for them within an hour, where it really just expedites a lot of the manual work that's required in traditional coding environments.
That's great. And so you said within an hour. I mean, is that just the dev work, or they already have it in production at that point?
It's already in production. Yeah. So we have an automated test suite that runs as soon as you deploy to our testing environment. And granted, this was not a large change in any of the functional components of the application. It was more just from a reporting perspective. So as soon as we deployed to our testing environment and it passed the automated testing suite, we were able to move it up to production, and the deployment process from development to production was 5 or 6 minutes of that hour.
Nice. And so we spoke a little bit about the time to market improvements going from custom .NET codes to OutSystems from a UI perspective. But I got to imagine that that's also true within the remainder of the system and your workflows, your integrations, your backend logic. What kind of an improvement did you see there?
Yeah, I wish I still had these numbers readily available, since we really aren't doing a ton of C# development any longer. But essentially, when we're doing a full new project from OutSystems for an internal user, which is my most recent experience with the intranet, which is why I'm using this example, is we took it from the bottom up, where it was first our data layer, and then an integrations layer where we're talking to third-party systems, whether that be a credit reporting bureau or a background check service, all the way up to those business logic flows, and then finally that UI. So the integrations and the business logic flows, those 2 central layers, are essentially, I would say, the brunt of development with low code. You really do see a shift from, and this obviously varies from organization to organization, but previously in our traditional coding environment, we saw about 3 developers per business analyst, where the expedition of the development within a low code platform really shifts that to almost a 1-to-1 ratio, where the vast majority of the time to market is spent in discovery and analysis with our end users at this point, where the canvas that allows you to develop quickly, we get back to that just logic and process-based individuals. So if you have someone who's proficient in the business logic and are a process-oriented individual, you can see that development if it's a well-defined story within an hour or two.
Nice. And going to one-to-one, and your developers are basically keeping up to pace with as fast as your business analysts can get those requirements to them. Is that right?
Yeah, and I would say that is even with the kind of cultural changes that we touched on earlier with just end user empowerment and the like, that is still our largest hurdle that we have with OutSystems, and it's a good hurdle to have, where just maintaining a consistent and large backlog has honestly become our largest bottleneck at this point, where that analysis and the definition of stories is something that we always have right at the forefront of our queue.
Yeah, I remember kind of going back to that same property and casualty insurance company. We had a very similar problem where, we'd get some requirements, build them out really quickly in OutSystems, and then ask the business, okay, what do you want next? And they're like, we don't know yet. It's like,
yeah,
well, think on that.
yeah. I don't like to twiddle my thumbs, so please send me some requirements more quickly.
Yep. Yeah, it's like I'm gonna go, find some low-hanging fruit over here while you figure out what you want me to do next.
And that actually brings up an interesting point too, where we actually saw there is some advantages to that, where we saw some developers taking a proactive solution to business problems. Where in casual conversations, once we started to bring the technology and business end users closer together, we saw more of and I hate the phrase, so I apologize for using it, but more of just that water cooler interaction, where developers also felt empowered to essentially solve business solutions that may not have been readily apparent to the end users themselves already.
Nice. But was it the water cooler or was it the coffee? I think it was.
Yeah, true. It was the coffee, probably.
Great. And then just moving on to our last topic here. So, we talked a little bit about the training, how that facilitated your success, and culture, how that was important. But can you speak in maybe a little bit more detail about what else you leveraged during the training and onboarding process beyond just the classroom training?
Yeah, so we essentially had two other pillars that we used as additional support when starting our OutSystems journey, where we had that training as kind of the framework for knowledge and development and shortening that learning curve, where you have the phrase where it's enough to be dangerous kind of scenario, yep. Where then we had the opportunity to work with Craig St. Jean right here, where you actually spent about 2 weeks with us on site and really allowing us to do more granular and use case specific training, where the OutSystems trainings, while free and robust, are never going to fit every single organization's specific needs. So really having that framework with the training and then that elaboration with that on-site work with Netlink really allowed us to build a more robust, long-term, architecturally responsible solution. And part of that is, and I've mentioned it without saying the name a couple times, is the 4-layer canvas, where it's really, you have these 4 layers of your application development within OutSystems, from data to integrations to core business logic to UI. And those 4 layers allow for expansion and maintainability across your OutSystems applications in the long term. And I think that was invaluable in at least expanding upon the training set that we had. And then we also took advantage of a guided success program via OutSystems, where I spoke to Joao out in Portugal more than my family at times in 2018 and 2019, where I myself and our development team spent 2 hours every week going over technical hurdles, any successes or problems that we may have encountered in development for the entire year in those first 12 months. And I think those three components, the training, the granular use case with Netlink, and then that long-term guided success program really allowed us to develop a responsible architecture that allowed us to expand very quickly over the next 3 years, or next 2 years.
Yeah, we used that program at my previous employer as well, and it was definitely a very personalized touch. It was like, hey, I'm having this problem, and then you get back, okay, well, here, I built this sample app for you that shows exactly how to do what you're trying to accomplish. So yeah, we found it very valuable. And just to expand a little bit on the 4-layer canvas that you mentioned, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's also sometimes called the architectural canvas or architecture canvas, and it's basically a methodology or method of building your OutSystems applications with the correct level of abstraction between your different modules to promote code reuse, maintainability, and I've lost the last one that I was going to mention, but it's part of that training, and is also you can just look it up on the website and see sort of how things are laid out to make it the best for you to use. So that's what that was.
Yeah, and I think that's context on our current technology stack with OutSystems. And this number is not, I want to provide a little pre-context. This number is not end user applications, it's just any deployable piece of software. But at this point, we have 53 different individually deployable pieces or applications within our OutSystems architecture in production. And I think without that 4-layer canvas, the maintainability would have made me lose my hair about 6 months ago.
Yeah. Great. And now I'd love to open this up to the audience a little bit more. Before we do that, I do just want to put this slide up, just so that way you have my contact information, Nick's contact information, so our email, our LinkedIn. Also, if you're interested in signing up for the free OutSystems Personal Edition, you can follow that link there. The Personal Edition gives you the ability to create anything that you want, web, mobile, so on, within just a personal environment. It runs on the OutSystems Cloud and AWS, so you don't need any infrastructure or anything like that. And you're able to build anything that you could with the fully licensed platform. There's some restrictions on additional features that help you go faster with the full license product, as well as some of the administration and analytics pieces to show what screens are slowing down over time, things like that you get with the licensed product. But definitely check that out. It's free. It's one of those free forever things. So you can sign up for it. You can build apps, and it's not going to go anywhere unless you stop using it. And then you can always just start it up again if that does happen. I think after 30 days, it clears itself just to free up the resources within OutSystems. But then you can just click a button and get it back. So now that that's out of the way, if anyone wants to unmute, talk maybe about where they're at in their evaluation of low code. Maybe you're already using it, maybe you're considering it. If you have any questions for Nick and Lendr and how their team was able to be so successful, I would love to see anything in chat. Unmute yourself, whatever works best for you. We'd love to hear from you. Nick, thank you so much, and thank you, Francis. Just reading from the chat there.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Craig. And just a side note about the personal environment, I actually use a personal environment.
Kinsley. If I give you my account number, can you please tell me if there is a balance due?
Sorry, what was that?
I didn't fully hear you. I got something in the mail that says a deposit of $10 must be made to satisfy cost of pleadings. I don't know if that's an old note or current?
Are you a Lendr customer, or is this? I'm a little confused here.
Lawrence Kingsley, if I give you my account number, can you tell me if this note I have in front of me is an old note or a current one about a balance due?
I think this is a recording.
So you asked for the SIV number or the account number? 248.
Yeah, let's.
Yep. Well, that was an interesting one. I'm sorry, Lawrence. I do not have your account number for us currently.
But thank you for being the first to be willing to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So a note about the personal environment is I actually utilize a personal environment for my own side projects. And it's actually just a great tool. I really don't see any day-to-day functional differences from our licensing perspective, and it's just a fun way to kind of explore the platform.
Yeah, and if anyone's curious about some of the really interesting things that are coming forward with the platform as well, I'd encourage you. Next step is OutSystems annual conference, and all of the sessions from Next Step are recorded. So you can actually go to outsystems.com/nextstep. Trina, if you wouldn't mind dropping that link in the chat, you can register for the 2020 event and look at the keynote and look at some of the other sessions and see, not just where OutSystems is out today, but also where they're going over this next year, and see some of these. They've got some amazing tools to help really automate getting up to speed with building an application for both technical and non-technical people. That's described there. Thank you, Trina. So yeah, I definitely encourage you, if you're curious, check that out. Trina put it in the chat. Open up your chat, take a look. Is it Abby? Do you have anything that you wanted to add there?
Just listening, thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Appreciate the webinar.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Well, I think if we've got a lot of people here, so it seems like we're it's lunch hour and maybe a little bit on the quiet side, at least in front of everyone else. So if you want to take this to a more personal conversation, more one-on-one, again, feel free to connect with myself or Nick through LinkedIn or email. We can have a more direct conversation in private if you'd like. Yeah, I want to thank you so much for joining. I'm gonna switch back to that last slide just in case anyone wants that contact information. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.